So I am starting our stream now, and I'm gonna have to move mine a little bit so people can at least see my name. Move you. Ooh, Blaine, I shrunk yours by accident.
That's fine. It's really weird that I don't have video, but
That is weird, but I'll get it in YouTube soon. Speaking of that, let me go to YouTube.
Oh, it looks good, Reed.
Oh, did you like that?
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's in YouTube right now, I am just getting it loaded, so bear with me for a second. We're helping Sherry work through some mic issues with us. And we are live now. I am just getting it loaded, so
not
bear with
me.
Yes,
issues.
no. She has no issues with
plenty
mic.
of issues for me, but she
everybody has issues with Mike.
Fair.
Let's see here. I'm going to try to update the name of our stream to YouTube so people know what they're watching. Let's see here. And I've sent you a message on Twitter, Sherry, in case you missed that, and I will check that in just a second. Live, right here. Around 29 live stream. Save. And that should update it live.
What if the disciplinary somewhere is over? Nope.
Yep, round 29 live stream. Okay, here we go. Good evening. Thanks, Cincinnati, for denting Montreal's playoff hopes. Oh, from a TFC fan, that makes sense, Chris. I was just super surprised that FCC won. Kind of pleasantly surprised, kind of not. I took a flyer with Tyler this week, so, but you know,
that hurt my show league. That game.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's see
yeah,
here. Back to
Piatti
Sherry.
scored negative points for me, which I didn't think was possible from winger position, but apparently so. That was fun. Thankfully, Sean Johnson saved that penalty kick, which saved me from putting in Evan for the keeper for this.
I'm gonna share this out real quick. Please share these things if you all see those as I get we're working with Sherry. So please, I'm gonna send out the link while we're doing this.
So with all the moving and everything and not paying as much attention, I saw that New York gave up a goal, so I went with Manone instead of Ramondo, who was cheaper and didn't see the final score of the first game. So I had Johnson stashed on my bench.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And that cost you the game against
It did.
Hey, Josh, welcome. Good to see the Jack Skellington avatar.
Let's see here. Don't mind me. I'm just posting on Reddit. Submit link.
Letting people know.
That's right. Letting the people know that they can join us.
I don't like this double game week.
Nah. To be honest, I like it more than I liked last week, where I was trying to figure out a double game week of internationals.
Yeah.
Part of it is was problem about this week is you just have so many of the teams where you're just like, I don't know who's going to bother to show up. I don't know what's going on with Portland. They suck at home, but they have two. New York Red Bulls, which version you get?
And I mean, that's New York
Seattle.
on the road to a Portland team who's hit or miss at home, and New York against one of the hottest teams in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah. I mean, the only good thing about a double game week right now is none of these teams are.
Yeah.
It's everyone's gonna full out with the situations with everybody.
How's that mic looking, Sherry? Are you able to? Oh, I see you typing now. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you heard me about the Twitter. So I'm relying on Mike and Blaine to entertain the masses right now. So we'll see how that works.
I'm all about entertaining.
Works.
All right. Well, Charles seems like he should probably take our jobs. 24th overall. That's awesome. Are you in first in any of the league? Let me get some prizes up in here.
Let's see here. I might be able to fix this a little bit better. Not working. I've tried 2 different headsets. Better start without me. Oh no. Does your laptop have a...
Yeah, but see, Chris, like this is where you talk about like Joseph Martinez. Everyone's captaining Joseph Martinez this week. I'm almost. Um, I'm assuming he's going to be far and away. So he like what he actually does is irrelevant, other than to your overall score and what you do against people like BB who haven't changed. That's the only bad thing about these double games. I mean, to me, the more interesting question is which other 2 Atlanta players. I think that's probably going to be the crux of the question this week.
Uh-oh. Sherry dropped off. It's going to mess with my configurations. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hold on. Hold on, everybody.
I will always love you.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. It's gone crazy.
Oh, jeez. I like split into multiple different boxes.
Yeah, but you guys are only split twice. I'm split into 4.
Oh, man.
This
Hey, I can
is,
see you guys in Discord now.
Oh, well.
Hey, awesome.
Okay, there's a little bit bigger mic right there for everyone to enjoy. We'll go ahead and fix Blaine. We'll get the.
I don't think anyone wants a bigger mic.
Bigger mic. Oh my god, what's going on? So I appreciate everyone sticking with us through some of these weird tech issues that we've had throughout this season with the switch from YouTube. Have definitely learned a lot about OBS Studio and some of these streaming things. So that's been fun. Definitely been fun. And we hope that you all have not found them too annoying. Really, honestly, for serious right now. Okay, there we go. For serious right now, I hope you've been enjoying the and I'll blank that one. I hope you've been enjoying the interaction that we can have with everybody. I know that was a thing that we really were happy to get going, because I think that's the main difference between what we're able to do and even some of, like, you can see some of it on Twitter with Weeby, or not Weeby, with Doyle and all the guys when they do the Fantasy United FC, but I feel like we've had some better interactions with people, more real time. A little bit, we have more time too. So there we go. Got some names right there so people can put there. Another week of disappointment. Oh no. So we are gonna run like this on an iPad. Mike, you've been on an iPad. Oh man.
Yeah,
how have
I've
you
done it
gotten
on
your
a-
how have you gotten your mic to work before for Sherry? So I can tell her.
I mean, I don't know if I've done it on since we did Discord. I mean, it just went whenever but that was on Google Hangout. Other than maybe playing with the microphone setting on her profile on the bottom left. That's the only thing I could. LA soccer fan, welcome. I saw your team. Your team and I have some similarities, James. So it'll be interesting. I think you and I are thinking the same sorts of craziness.
Oh, everyone got to see that little alt tab right there. Okay, well, Sherry is going to keep working on her situation with us as we're getting going, and we are going to start this show. Pardon me as I am loading up the rundown that we're using for tonight. And
Do we have a brought to you by?
no, we don't. I'll let you wing that one if you like.
Okay.
Ooh,
Make it good. Make it good. Oh, let's start with the chat. Do you guys have a brought to you by for tonight's episode that you'd like to hear us say? No, no one's got a brought to you by. This is crazy.
There's so much. There was so much craziness. I'm trying to think of like normal crazy dress.
Okay, I think I've got this. Ibra, the best MLS player ever. I mean, is that a joke brought to you by, or is that just the reality of the situation? I can't not ha ha ha. There it comes. There it comes. Brought to you by the LA Galaxy, the team that scored a touchdown in a game. Brought to you by VAR, blowing reviews and wasting time. Lots of good suggestions here. I like.
Do you see mine, Reed? I just typed it too.
No, I didn't see yours pop up. Patrick's the last
In
one I see.
Discord.
Oh, in
It is
Discord.
Discord. I didn't put it.
Oh, I don't even have that. I'd have to Alt Tab and do some things and.
Oh,
it's all ridiculous.
jeez, you're making this so complicated.
I mean, I can try to do that little our
Let's see.
Discord
All right,
text.
I will put it in the
See, there's-
in the YouTube.
What's up, JoJo? We're just getting started. Thanks for everyone as we're working through some of these technical difficulties. Please tweet out the show so everyone knows that we are getting started and going. And Mike's going to share this controversial brought to you by.
It's not a controversy.
He built it up. Brought to you by the touchdown now in MLS. You guys are really, you're really hitting on this LA Galaxy one. Really hitting on this LA Galaxy one. I like that one, Mike. Okay, we'll do
It's
it.
either that or just like upsets. What I mean, we've done so many because MLS.
We have. We're gonna go with the touchdown because it seems what people like. It was a good suggestion from Mike, and it touches on our LA Galaxy. So
Tomas
we'll do
likes
that.
it. Tomas, a man of great taste.
That's right. Everyone's
I think-
here. So thank you everyone for listening. Again, retweet the message I have out there so everyone else knows we're getting started. We will cover what you want with hope. We'll get Sherry back on. If not, she will probably join us in chat if we can get that microphone working. But we'll definitely give her a plug. And if nothing else, we'll get like some sort of statement to read next week or whatnot. But all right, so let's get going with this.
She's like a politician who couldn't come. It was a statement you read.
I mean,
Well,
she's
someone accept the
beating
award on
us.
her behalf.
She's the front runner. We could.
I mean, yeah.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to our 2019 Round 29 episode of the MLS Fantasy Insider. This episode is brought to you by The Touchdown, now in MLS. No. Actually, brought to you by MLSFantasyBoss.com and the amazing subreddit community of r/FantasyMLS. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my usual partners in fantasy. Almost messed that one up. Michael Denton and Blaine Riffle. We'd also like to welcome our very special Patreon guest, Sherry Snyder, who's having some technical difficulties getting her microphone to work with Discord right now. So she may not be able to join us. We'll see. It's a work in progress. But if not, we'll definitely get some comments from Sherry going forward. But thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you, people in live chat, for joining us. What's up, fellas?
Oh, we're doing all right, Reed.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little tired. As you can see, my office has disappeared on me.
Yeah, some new background scenery from Blaine. He was promising us like just mounds and shelves of games and like a giant picture or poster of Boba Fett, and it's not happened. All I'm seeing is what may or may not be an outlet up to code in the background, missing some stuff there. Oh, Sherry's popped in. This is going to drive our stream crazy for just a second. For those of you watching us, so give me just a second for the stream. I think I can get this fixed up pretty quick. I'm getting pretty good at it, of getting this stuff fixed on the fly. So what have you guys been up to as we're getting things worked out for Sherry?
Oh, honestly, I watched a lot of soccer this weekend. It was a really fun weekend with all the playoff seeding going on and all the races pretty tight except for first in the West. It was a lot of really good soccer. and a lot of crazy results. So, especially since New York City won and won early, I was able to kind of sit in the clubhouse and enjoy the chaos and folds as it did involve my. I don't know if Blaine can say the same, but
You know, I watched the game. I watched the whole thing. There's no way I was going to turn that off. And I described it in a sporting forum today. Go up 1-0 and then give up the equalizer. Like, that's okay. Whatever. Keep pushing for it. Go down 2-1. You still got a little hope. Maybe you can pull something out. Go down 3-1, and you're like, okay, season's probably over. Go down 4-1 and just go, okay, who cares anymore? And after that, every goal was just adding on to the misery, and it didn't hurt at all, really, at that point. It was just like, yep, the season's over.
You all still have a small chance to
I
make
think
it according
we
to
have to
538.
run the table, and Dallas has to lose out for us to have a chance.
I mean, I said a
Like,
small
I think
chance.
If Dallas picks, I think if Dallas picks up 1 or 3 points anywhere, it's over.
Dallas could lose all their games. So they have a pretty tough.
Mike, I'm having trouble
I
finding.
mean, even this at Seattle, New York City. I mean, they'll probably get at the point against New York City again.
Yeah, and the worst part about this run from Kansas City is that they've been terrible. It's all the help we've gotten along the way. Every team that has needed to lose has lost along the way.
Yeah.
So that the door would be wide open for us to slip into the playoffs, and we're not capitalizing.
So what's your stance on Vermes while we watch poor Reed have to readjust the stream again?
So, chat, what's your thought on Vermes? Should he stay or should he go at this point?
Because my thought, and I put this on Twitter, is I don't have a problem with him as a coach, but I think the days of the GM and coach in MLS, they have to be gone. The scouting from Sporting Kansas City just hasn't been there the past few years. I don't think they've made a great signing since I've been following MLS for about 5 years now. I guess maybe 6 because New York City's 5 years, I think.
Are you kidding? Well, depends on how you define great. If you're talking DP caliber, instant playmaker, no, but they've never spent the money on that either. And they've struggled to recruit.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about just crazy finds and crazy good signings, Ilie has been solid.
Okay.
Felipe Gutierrez, Chilean international. I mean, that's one Vermes went out and got and paid good money for. Johnny Russell's another one that he's went out and paid good money for. And then the kind of the discovery find was Latif Blessing, and look at what he's doing with LA now after the expansion draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one burns
Although
me
that
up.
with LA is quite an asterisk.
Yeah, but I mean, that one kind of burns me too. But you talk about just playmakers that Vermes has brought to MLS. There's a bunch of them there, and a lot of guys who are getting significant minutes. So.
Okay, we've got the stream set up back up. Apologies to those in chat who were listening. Backup plan in case this happens again. If you haven't joined us in one of our live chat sessions, we have a special little picture graphic layover that I'm able to adjust the boxes so that we all appear in certain places with names and tags. So I've had to readjust that a few times as we're trying to work out some things with Sherry. But I've got a backup plan for what to do in case we need to do some stuff again. But now we're going to keep moving forward. You're here to listen about fantasy. We're here to talk about fantasy. So let's start with a recap. We were already doing it a little bit. How'd your teams do? Let's start with you, Mike.
All right, my team did 130, which was okay. My main thing was I captained Zlatan. Always captained Zlatan. That was pretty much one of the few things I did to work out. I think kind of the big strain on everyone was New York City players, is really outside of Matriza. Not many of them did all that well. And my only saving grace was I had Medina on the bench, who didn't end up coming in. I had Wando come in off my bench as my lone Ottaru player for 10 points, which helped me out a little bit. Had Pavone, had Pozuelo. Really none of my defenders did anything, but I think outside of RSL defenders, not many. RSL and maybe some Houston defenders, not many of them did all that well. I did have Sean Johnson. I kept him after the PK save. And I think he was the highest scoring goalie of the week. So that's pretty much about it. I mean, I think most double game week players, there was a lot of really solid double-digit scores. So as long as you had as many of them and didn't get dragged down by the bad New York City choice, I think you did okay this week.
Blaine, what about you?
Yeah, so I got burned by a couple of last minute transfer decisions. Again, 123 overall for the points. Week rank 1900 something. So yeah, not great. I saw the lineups and I was like, oh, Gregus is back. So let's grab him. And I dumped Finley for Gregus, which ate some extra money. And then they scored the exact same. And then I was like, I was really high on Minone all week, and I was just like, you know what? I saw Johnson give up a goal. I've been busy with the move, so I was like, okay, we're just gonna go with Minone. We're gonna save a little bit of money on Ramondo. Johnson gave up the goal, then he saves a penalty, ends up with the 5 extra points on that one, and could have saved me a lot of money to throw somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, those 2 moves right there, I think really sunk my week a little bit and kept me from moving up in the ranks. I did captain Zlatan, so that was good. I managed to avoid most of the New York City trap. Actually, none of the 3 New York City player scores counted for me, or one of them did. I had Ringing Tati on the bench, and so I got the 4 instead of the 3 there. Didn't get Sean Johnson's point, so that one hurt. But I mean, I had Pozuelo and Pavone in there, and Shinyushiki got a 9 for his price, which was great. And my defense was a 6, 6, and 8. So no real complaints here. I mean, I think I got solid scores all the way around, but I could have been just a little bit better had I not made a couple of those last transfers, because I had Herrera in the early lineup and he got dropped to Smith on the defense. So I just, to use some money elsewhere, I lost a few points on for my overall score.
Yeah, so I had some similar reactions as you, Blaine. I took out Ramondo and swapped him with Manone at the same point when I saw what was happening in the New York City game. I didn't stay long enough with Johnson, so I also missed out on his 12 points, but I got the 7 for Manone. I had 125 points overall, so I think that's a pretty solid score. And that's the way I want to describe it. It's a solid score. It's not knock it out of the park. I know lots of people had higher scores than 125, but it's a good score. When I look at my players, Ring was my lowest scoring player with 4 points, so I didn't miss out on all of that New York City FC player fail. But I've got 6 points from Aro, 6 points from Smith, 8 points from Etner on the back in my defense, which is pretty solid for a lot of those players. And I got 9 points from Eriksson, 16 points from Pozuelo, 12 points for Pavone, which is great. And then I had Zlatan captain for 38 points. I got 9 points from Shin Yashiki, which is solid. And then I had Wando coming off the bench with 10 points. So really solid. Just some of those small little pieces here or there where some extra points could have come in. I took a flyer. I had Titer on my bench. Instead of going with another double game week guy, I put Titer to see if I could get some points out of that FC Cincinnati game. He got 6, which they lost. Preview of a surprise. Montreal lost, and so that didn't happen. But that was a little flyer I took. We'll touch into one of the reasons why I did that in just a few minutes with the show. But yeah, pretty solid. If you got triple digits, you definitely did what you should have done for this round. Sherry's popped back in, so I'm going to go to a backup plan really quick. Bam, and add this real quick. And display capture.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to talk about some of the scores in chat because we have some good ones. Tomas got 150. That's a great score. Week rank 45. Charles got 144. Ryan 136. Joel 146. Overall rank 50. That's great. Ryan overall to 14. That's awesome. Some other ones we got a few 123s from Josh and Patrick. 129 from James Carling, who said his defense and Minone hurt. I think defense was really tough. I think that's probably, if you get into the next echelon of scores, you had to really nail the defense this week because a lot of the defenders that we were picking were disappointments. And I think I got all the scores. Kendrick got 140. Nano got 127 for some new scores. So yeah, if you're in chat, haven't posted your score, post it. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people did around the 120s to 130 range, and a few players got over the hump into the 140 to 150.
Yeah, that's awesome, Joel. That 146. I got that switched up really quickly, so I was ready with my backup plan for getting this, keeping this stream on as Sherry is working on some of her audio problems. Let's go to some of the head-to-heads real quick. I wanted to review these. I know we had a big matchup this week. Blaine was going up against Weeby. Mike was going up against Weeby. Blaine was going up against Doyle, and I was going up against Dominic, who I'll just be straight up with you all right now. Dominic started out pretty solid with us at the beginning of the year, but faded away and seems to be a dead team. I did not remove him from our hosts league, which maybe some might have expected, but I figured everyone had the shot to get just some points right there, and so I left him. And so that was just my week. So I got an easy win for myself. Mike, you also had an easy win. How do you want to talk about that one?
I mean, I just do what I do. Just beat Weeby. It's very, very typical. I mean, it's sad because I'm sure we're probably not going to have him in our host league, so I just kind of enjoyed it as my one last final hurrah. Although I'm sure next year he'll claim he's going to play again and it's going to be a different story, and maybe some fans will vote him in, but we're not going to let him.
The Wooden Spoon Award is henceforth in fantasy known as the Andrew Weeby Award. That's just what you get. It's not the taco, it's the Weeby. We all know that's what it is, right? Right, chat? Right, podcast world? Yeah.
I am excited because Extra Time did put out a call for guarantees, and I checked to see if I had made any guarantees. And I'm like, if New York City scores 4 more goals, I'm going to nail a guarantee, which gives me a reason to harass Weeby for another T-shirt. Which, if you were around last year, that's very fun. Just like everything that Weeby says, I'm like, hey, where's my T-shirt? I just annoy the bejesus out of him.
I think next year, easily, one of us has to send in a guarantee for Weeby finishing last in every fantasy league that he's in. So, I mean, that's yeah. It. Now, Blaine, yours was much closer.
Yeah. I screwed that one up. I think I lost to Doyle by, 3 points, which is less than the difference between Monone and
2 points.
2 points. Oh, it shrunk all the way to 2.
125 to 123.
That's definitely less than the difference between Monone and Johnson. So any one move, and it would have been my week, and we would have probably won the ETR versus MLSFI head-to-head, which I think, chat, you need to go harass those guys on Twitter because of Weeby. Definitely harass Weeby and try to get it to where we can just do an MLSFI versus ETR team head-to-head league, just a 2-team head-to-head, and let those guys come up with a team, we come up with a team, and see who wins the most rounds next year.
It could be fun. We've got James Carling talking right now.
Weeby not ever playing anymore. He's always got somebody to cover for him. Put a lineup.
I thought that's what his intern was for. We've got James Carling in chat right now. Weeby and Sagini were the two that got me into MLS Fantasy. That is true. I remember those little podcasts or video casts they used to do with the starting lineup, and those were awesome. Those were so much fun. And I'm sorry that they can't be around. With hope, our podcast is helping replace that a little bit, but yeah, Sagini actually played in our league as well. He started out real strong. I think he sort of slacked off some near the end as well, but he was definitely all about it at the beginning, and it was really fun having some of the OG guys in the league with us. Keep going forward. Top score this week goes to Ryan Anderson, MLS Fantasy Stats, with 142 points. So I've seen Joel did better than that, but that's a great score right there. And Sherry, who is still working on getting our video going, her sound going, and maybe she'll just join in chat and just let people know what she thinks in chat. But she is still on top of the host head-to-head league with a score of 12-0-1. But you know what? At this point, Sherry has basically won the supporter shield of the host league because we have a playoff structure. And if you're not in a head-to-head league with a playoff structure, you have an option for how many rounds your playoff will start. I always select the most, which is 3. And so for these final 3 rounds of the season, we are doing special matches, and that has gone down to the top 8 players, and we're in a quarterfinal right now. So we're going to keep whittling it down until we just have our own little cup game. And coming up for next week, we have Sherry versus let's see here. I lost my window real quick. We have Sherry versus Steve McPherson from over at Minnesota, who has been a great player and a great also fantasy podcast this year. You guys should check out. We have Ben Bear, Gringo Oso, going against. Let's see here. Going up against Matt Pollard, and that's funny because Matt's been like super down on himself for his fantasy performance most of this year, but Petke's Printer SC has been doing it in this final match. So Ben is going up against Matt Pollard, and that should be fun. Then we have Ryan Anderson, MLS Fantasy Stats, versus myself, the only member of our host to make it in. Ben is the only member of the MLS crew to make it in as well. Cutthroat. That'll be a match. Ryan will probably beat me because he is a beast of a player. So, but that'll be a tough match for this double game week. And then we have a classic MLS Fantasy Insider, MLS Fantasy Boss matchup coming up: Jason Wiskovich versus Older Goaler. Both longtime participants in this project, this community project that we have going. Excellent fantasy players, so some really fun matches as we wind down the season, especially in our head-to-head league and any head-to-head leagues you all have. This is what is the most fun for me. Finally, going over to Patreon, we have Skiles is still leading the league with a record of 11-1-0, but Seagraves is right behind him with a record of 10-1-1. I think we have some people with a record of 10-0-2 as well. So lots of people are really close. Final 3 matches could overtake it and win this thing. So Patreon is still heating up. And I tell you, these head-to-head leagues, I love them. I love them so much. I don't know if anybody, if you're in chat and you love head-to-head leagues, let me know right now. I know Blaine and Mike enjoy what goes on with this as well. So this is where the fun is for me.
I didn't realize Doyle knocked me out of the playoffs
He
too.
did.
Had I won that matchup, I would have finished 5th on that and been playing. Actually, would have been playing Jason this week.
It's rough. It's rough.
It is rough.
That's right. It's hardcore time right here. Let's move on to talking about round 28. Crazy, especially the final game of the round. Let's just start with your fantasy takeaways and surprising moments. Blaine.
I mean, surprising moment. Columbus going to Atlanta and putting up 3 goals and getting a win. I mean, we've talked up Atlanta's defense at home all season. They've usually looked pretty strong. I know a lot of us went in on that one pretty big. I guess. Sorry, I'm thinking Show League. Show League was huge for that game, and I think everybody got burned on that one. I was looking at that one, and then all of a sudden, I don't know where that came from, but yeah, nobody's safe in the Eastern Conference right now.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, this is a week where you could kind of say which game wasn't a surprise.
That's true.
I mean, I know Portland struggled at home, but I mean, losing 1-0 to DC probably should have been 2-0 if VAR had gotten the call correct. That's a bad result for them. The most surprising game I'm going to let to Reed to talk about because he hasn't, as an FC Cincinnati fan, he hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities to brag, so I'm going to let him get it. Seattle getting 4 against New York Red Bulls, so 4-2. I wasn't expecting that. And then the game we talked about earlier, Zlatan putting up a touchdown against SKC. SKC had kind of looked a lot better recently. They looked like they kind of finally gotten over the injuries and got it together. But, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just SKC kind of giving up on the game or to me, it just looked like Zlatan was out there having fun. It was a national game. It was a big game with playoff implications, and he came to play. And when he comes to play, he's the best player in the league. And he just showed, he was doing like back heel passes, having fun with Pavone. Leggett almost got a hat trick. It was a crazy fun game to watch. But, some other ones, the Revs in Orlando having a slobber knocker to get to a draw, which probably almost eliminates Orlando. And the Fire winning 4-0 against Dallas. Who saw that coming? With all the talk about maybe Orlando can sneak in. Right now, the Fire are ahead of Orlando. With new owner, is that enough to boost their confidence that they get into the playoffs, which would be absolutely crazy considering how they played. Just a lot of crazy results, that we get this time of year because all of a sudden all the games matter and all these teams are trying to get into it, which makes the last month of MLS so much more fun than other leagues.
Yeah, well, you said it for me, Mike. The biggest surprise for me for this round is the Montreal lost FC Cincinnati, and that was a road game for FC Cincinnati. I mean, scoring, Cruz is been one of my favorite players for the entire season. Just seeing him play at the beginning, at the Portland game, and the other couple games, the other game that I've caught since then, couple games I've caught since then. He's always been a guy I'm like, you know what, he's solid, and in a sea of. He's been a guy I've really enjoyed. So great to see him get that opening goal. Shocking to see him get that opening goal. And I didn't have a lot of faith, honestly, because what I've seen is we've done well out the gate, a lot of high energy, but we just haven't been that full 90, and it's always worn on us and have given things up late. And that could have happened because even though Cincinnati got that early goal, we still saw, just going to the quick stats, I mean, they were outshot 2-1 by Montreal. So the chances were there. They just couldn't connect them. And that's what is even more surprising, or why the surprise is not just Cincinnati winning, but that's what's surprising is being outshot 2-1, having Piatti available, having Tyler available, having all those pieces that we've been talking about that when they're there seem dangerous, and it didn't turn out. So that was the huge shocker for me right there. The second one is that score from LA, because I went to bed just looking at my phone, seeing some of the updates. I'm like, oh, okay, Sporting Kansas City scored. That's not really how I wanted this game to start out. And then I got another update. I'm like, oh, all right, Zlatan scored. That's pretty good. That's going to be a solid game. I'm going to go to bed and read this book for a little bit and go. And then I keep hearing my phone buzz, and I'm like, what is going on? Holy crap, 7-2? You got to tell me that there's a hat trick in here for Zlatan. There it is. So that was just a shocker to see that game run up so quickly. So ridiculous. Fantasy takeaways. I'll start out and throw it to you guys. Looking back at these games, we could see the impact of the double game week clearly at the beginning. Sorry, not the double game. We could see the impact of the international call-ups clearly at the beginning of this double game week, with the teams having lower scores than I think a lot of us expected in some of these games. I mean, the draw with New York City, and then the small wins that we saw. A lot of us called the Colorado win, but I think some of us were even questioning Real Salt Lake with who they were missing. So you can see the impact that those call-ups have, which should not be an issue going forward. Going forward, I think we got to expect a lot of these teams to be dropping in everything they have to try to make these spots, which are still so competitive. And I have to agree with Chat. We talked about some of the biggest fantasy takeaways. Columbus on the road, Cincinnati on the road. We had several road successes this week. So it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So you just have to pay attention to those lineups.
And we talked about early in the week, TFC probably should have beaten New York City. If not for Son Johnson's save, they would have. But I was surprised that TFC didn't do more with having Josie back and Pozuelo, and New York City missing Maxi and both center back, and then maybe even both New York City games, because New York City then ended up not having Maxi Morales for the second game due to a hamstring issue. So both of those were really kind of surprising to me. I would have expected more success playing good teams, but they didn't have. Thankfully for me.
Blaine, take away.
I didn't get to watch a whole lot. Really have anything at this point.
Mike?
Takeaway, Joseph Martinez continues his scoring streak, even with Atlanta's problems. That's still going strong. Vela coming back, getting a goal. Other than like Philly has shown that they're pretty good against good teams at home. So, that's something to keep in mind this week when they host the Red Bulls. I think they host the Red Bulls. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Red Bulls host them. So we'll see how they can do on the road where they've had problems. But yeah, something interesting in chat is that Montreal's lost all 6 points against FC Cincinnati. That's a good way to miss out on a playoff spot.
For sure. Another surprise I'll add on here is one of the other away wins I didn't mention just a second ago, and that was DC over Portland. And we've mentioned DC struggles. We've talked about some of Portland's struggles, even though they had this long home run. That's an important takeaway because Portland has a double game week in round 29, so a lot of us will be looking to those Portland players. And people like Brian Fernandez, who have not been producing, have to be questionable. I feel more comfortable with a player like Valeri, even with some of these results, just because he is a person who's able to generate some of these bonus points, and even during this game he got 5 points without a lot of options for him. So that's a takeaway that I have going into this week, is just looking at that Portland score and seeing what their results were. Quick look to chat. I don't see any other big takeaways coming through here. It's hard to get some solid takeaways when we have situations like this. Sherry, I see the microphone symbol has gone. Are you with us?
I think so.
Ah,
Yay!
there we go. We have it. Thank you for struggling with us, and you came in just at the right time. So I'm going to throw it off to you to let you share with us your fantasy takeaways and most surprising moments from round 28 before we get to a little bit I set aside just for you.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest surprise I had was that I was almost beaten by an inactive team.
Yes.
This is a little embarrassing. It was really strange. I kept seeing all these single game players come up. And the thing that really scared me is that he captained Gaitan, and who got, I think it was 18 points as a captain. And the only reason I won is that, it was Latan, who's usually getting me 2 points. So I was able to pull it off, but I was just shocked. And what struck me was how well the single game players were doing. That was a little disconcerting. So that was one of my most surprising moments. I was also surprised by DC United winning. They went into Benny Ball and did well.
Pleasantly surprised, though.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I think that's about it for the surprises. But I think the single game week players did well, and I think the kids did well too.
For sure.
Some of the youngers. I looked at the Dream Team.
Yeah.
And the average value was 8.5 million, which seems low to me. There were a lot of like 6.1 players on there.
Yeah,
so
it's
always
it's always so weird with the call up times and the double game weeks. You never know when that stuff's going to happen. So yeah, it's great to see the kids being played.
Mm-hmm.
But you bring up an interesting point that I love that you mentioned, and I know we talked about this some. A lot of the single game week players had some solid showings, and it just makes me wonder if our structure was different. Like if we've talked about this before, if double games didn't count as much, if single games counted more, or if you only, like in the show league and some of the other games that we've played, you only get the highest points from a double gaming, so you only get the best points from one of the two double games. How much more strategy that adds into your fantasy time. Like, you get 2 bites at the apple, but the single game week guys are just as viable, and we saw some of that, and I would love to see that as a change if it's possible for the next season.
Yeah, I mean, it would have made a big difference in a lot of these, because I mean, a lot of these scores are kind of 2 decent games that added up to a really good score into double digits. But I mean, like, Zlatan would have been an interesting case for your change, because he didn't do well the first game. You know, do you leave him in because he's got the good against Sporting Kansas City, and that's where the points came. So it would have been a really interesting week for that change to be in. Whenever Sherry was talking about the Dream Team, I did put it up, and we should probably note Marlon Minotes has had himself a great week, 19 points.
Yeah.
I think he was the best captain pick before Zlatan, and I guess he technically could still be the best captain pick. But you know, Zlatan's Zlatan, so he gets that armband in the Dream Team regardless of if anyone else is equal to him. But I mean, yeah, great week against 2 bad opponents for Houston, even though they didn't win the second game. There was definitely some points for the Houston Dynamo, but it was so hard to pick which players it was.
So with that being said, what I'd like to do now is give Sherry an opportunity. So you all have heard us talk about Sherry for this whole half of the season, at least, if not some of the first one. Sherry is one of our top Patreon donors, and because of that, she gets to participate in the host head-to-head Invitational League. And not only has Sherry participated in this league, she's been in it, I think, every season. I think Sherry's been one of our top donors since we started. But Sherry has been dominating this half of the season, is right there at the top of the supporters shield of the host head-to-head league, and is going in with that first place spot secured into our playoff series in this league. So what I'd like to do right now is give Sherry an opportunity to talk about her experience with fantasy, her experience with this podcast and this community and Patreon, and let people hear her story, and also why she is continuing to be a supporter of this community project that we have.
Well, I probably know a lot less about soccer than most other people, and I rely heavily on this podcast, the rankings that JD Bazo and Skylar Redpath put out. I try to use all of them. But when I first started listening to the podcast, I said, I would never know this. That means information I would never know about the teams, the strategy, why one team you might think they're going to do better, but they won't because, and then the answer would be there. So I felt that it was worth supporting, and it takes a lot of work to do this. And, you all have outside lives, and I really appreciate it, because I was coming up with my picks for tonight, and I realized, well, I can't do this until I listen to the podcast. So there was cart horse. So
You'd just be like Blaine last week.
But I actually came up with the picks. But I know
Take
you're
that,
going
Blaine.
to talk me out of it.
Well, Sherry, I was going to say we do that a little bit here on the show anyway, where I've caught Reed saying it. I know Mike's done it a few times, and I do it occasionally, that we listen to everybody else's picks, and we go, I think I'm going to go with that because they make a good case for this one, and I didn't think of that. So we do bounce off of each other and steal ideas every so often, because everybody on here thinks of something that we haven't thought of yet. And even though we're supposed to be the experts and we give out the ideas, we talk and we listen to each other a lot.
Well, that makes me feel better.
And I think you point out probably the most important resource to any fantasy manager is just looking at all the sources available to you. I mean, we're fantasy managers, just like real managers. You're looking at the field and using what we're talking about in the podcast, looking at Skylar and Jason's rankings, looking at stats collected by Ryan and the general stats on the fantasy website. It's all information you can take to use, and sometimes you hear a lot of us talking about the same thing, and there's a reason for that, like when we're talking about captaining Zlatan, or why you might want to have a certain keeperoo option set up. There's reasons that a lot of us may I don't want to say experts, because I mean, to some extent, an expert's just someone who's stopped learning, and I think we're all learning, but it's like there's a reason sometimes we all gravitate to some things. But other people always come in with different ideas. I love seeing what chat has. I love seeing what Mike and Blaine have. I love seeing the stuff that Skylar and other people talk about in Discord chat. So it's all information you can get, because, as Sherry mentioned earlier, we saw a lot of mid-range guys put up great scores this week. And it's very rare that you can go through, just pick the most expensive players and expect to have the best week. Even though that's where I think a lot of us try to sometimes. Go ahead.
That was another point I wanted to bring up. I mean, I have 127 million, and it's actually a handicap. Because I keep thinking, I've
You
got
wanna
to
spend
it
it,
all.
yeah.
I can't leave 5 million in the bank. That would be wrong. And so I missed some good picks that players just don't have that high a value. So it can be a curse too. But another point I wanted to make is that I really enjoy Behind the Numbers.
Yeah. Kyle's article.
Yeah, and it's I use it for a particular team to decide whether I'm going to pick defensive or offensive players, for example. I use cheat sheet. I use take advantage of just about everything.
Yeah.
And what I like about the podcast is that it's not just the information, it's the why, and the analysis with it, and what brought you to that conclusion. So it's very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are some great resources. I stumbled because I saw that Patrick was saying that he left 13 million in the bank this past week, and I was just shocked. I was just
And he
shocked.
did very well.
And he did very well. Patrick also is one of our top supporters, and he does very well.
I rest my case.
There we go. Well, that was a great testimony. We're so happy to have you on the show this week, Cher, because you have done so well, and I think that's just a great story to share with people. So we're going to go to our housekeeping right now, but we look forward to getting your picks. And then, chat, I want to hear what you all want to hear us talk about and the picks that you're looking at. So get ready. But first, let's go to our housekeeping for round 29, starting with the double game week teams. We have FC Cincinnati, my FC Cincinnati, Atlanta, Portland, New York Red Bulls, Seattle, and Dallas. Of these teams, FC Cincinnati has a double home game and Portland has a double home game. Nobody has a double away game this week, so everyone else is just going to split home and away. Important to know. As far as bye teams go, nobody. Everyone's in this fray. Well, kinda, depending on what the playoff picture is, which is New York City FC, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and LAFC are the only 4 teams who have 100% clinched a playoff spot at this time. A lot of teams are close, really close. But technically, those are the only 4 teams who have the numbers to support them having clinched a spot. By the numbers, FC Cincinnati and Vancouver are still the only 2 teams who have been eliminated from the playoff picture, but there are several teams who are still on a bubble. And so I'm looking at 538 for these stats, and I'm going to list you the teams that have a less than 10% chance to make the playoffs as well. So you have Colorado, Houston, Columbus, Sporting Kansas City, and Orlando. So all those teams are less than 10%. Now, why do I mention this? And that's because I think you should consider that when you are looking at building your team. It may not impact a lot of the double game week teams this week, except for maybe FC Cincinnati and some of the top scoring in Atlanta. But some of these teams may decide to rest. Some of these teams may decide to play their kids because what else are they going to do? Some of these teams may bring everything they have, maybe Sporting Kansas City or Orlando, as they try to just eke into that last spot to make a playoff. So take that in consideration when you're making your teams, because it does definitely matter for this part of the season. So that's what I have for the quick update. Mike, housekeeping.
There's not a whole lot of housekeeping. I checked the disciplinary summary. It hasn't been updated since September 6th. So that means that some teams have played up to 3 games since that. Like, it still shows that Max Morales has 4 yellow cards and doesn't include the game in which he got the yellow card, served the suspension, and all that. So I can't tell you who's on yellow card warning. I wish I could. I won't go into that rant right now. Max Morales did have a hamstring injury. I don't know of any other major injuries going into this week, but something to keep in mind. Apart from the double game weeks, there are 2 other teams that have a double game week this week. That is Toronto and Montreal, as they are playing in the first of 2 legs in the Canadian Championship. The second leg will be next week, I believe. So keep that in mind, because Toronto and Montreal players will probably be going hard at it. I was especially Montreal, but I don't know what their priority is. I think both of those teams are probably going to take the shot to try to get a trophy, since they're both long shots for MLS Cup. But you never know, especially with Montreal having a brand new coach, how they'll approach it. But definitely check those lineups too, because that may affect whether or not you want some single game week.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. I mean, you talk about the East, but even over there in the West, only LAFC has qualified right now. So that's going to be a battle. I mean, that's kind of where I expect a lot of things to go crazy, is over in the West.
Yeah, it's LAFC and LA Galaxy. Montreal plays the LA Galaxy. TFC plays LAFC.
So it's going to be wild.
So both of those have to play in Canada and then fly all the way to Los Angeles for a Saturday.
It's going to be crazy. All right. I will also add Probably not someone who's high up on the list, but it is a double game week team, so I will mention it. Cruz did leave a little early from the FC Cincinnati game in the second half, so questionable, or at least someone to watch. But I don't know if FC Cincinnati players are going to be anything more than maybe switcheroo options this week, so I'll just leave that there. But let's move on to our round 29 preview, starting with keepers, defenders, and clean sheets. Chat if you all have questions about any particular players or just topics you want us to discuss. Let's go ahead and get those right now as we start with Blaine, keepers, defenders, and clean sheets.
Yeah, always look for kind of clean sheets first, and this week's a little tough. I think you got to go Atlanta United for the clean sheet shout. The rest of them are kind of hit and miss. I think Seattle's probably a decent shout on either one of those legs. So I could see definitely loading up here. With current budget, I haven't been able to yet, but that is subject to change. I'm starting with Guzan as my keeper and Escobar as my Atlanta coverage on defense here. I am going to go 2 in the back for Atlanta this week. I think that's where the money needs to go with the rest of the picks. And then I've got Cannon and Tuiloma as well. Both of them are 5.6. I like Dallas. I really like Hollingshead for his offensive potential, but 10 million, and I just don't like the defensive matchup here. I mean, that may come back to bite me, but I just could not justify spending 10 million on defense with the way the rest of my lineup is looking right now and how much money I felt like I needed to spend going forward on the double game weeks. So if you have Hollingshead in here, you would hear no complaints from me. I couldn't work him in. One of these two guys would be Smith for Seattle if I could afford him, and if I see cheaper Seattle players starting that first game, I may go for it. But we're just kind of up in the air on that one at the moment.
Who is your keeper again?
Guzan.
Guzan. Michael.
All right, so I went with Fry in. One of the reasons for me is he was a lot cheaper than Guzan. I think Guzan does have a really good chance at 2 clean sheets. I think Atlanta does. That's why I put in Escobar. I had to go really cheap, as I'll explain a little bit later. I have Tuloma from Portland. 2 home games. I know Portland has struggled, so I'm just kind of taking a shot. And then on my bench, I have Deplanier from FC Cincinnati. Not a great shout, but you know what? He's $4 million, so we'll see what he can do. And then I have Tim Parker, excuse me, from the New York Red Bulls. I don't think it's inconceivable that they get a clean sheet against Portland with the way Portland has struggled. And if you look at some of the stats from their offensive ineptitude against DC United, I can really see them doing well against Portland. So I'm going to take a shot at Parker, and that's really all I have. I just kind of went really cheap on the back line.
Sherry.
Well, I went really big on the back line. I have Clark. I was kind of wishing that Portland had 2 away games because they tend to do better. But anyhow, I picked Clark. I have Moreira, Robinson, and then I did have Waston, but he's got a red dot after his name. I just noticed that. I'm going to get a cheap defender.
The international break that they haven't fixed. So double.
Okay. So that's my back line. I think I'm probably going to downsize it a little bit, and because I only had room for 4 midfielders. So that's what I've got so far.
Yeah, I have a mix of several of these players. I also went with Clark in the back. I was considering Fry because I'm only using 2 offensive players from Seattle right now, so I'm kind of up in the air as to if I'm going to settle with Clark or not. Because I had the same worry as you do, Sherry, that they've not always been fantastic at home. Red Bulls have struggled some. We had a comment in chat asking us about New York Red Bulls players from Charles. I hadn't thought about that for defense, Mike, but you make a good point. I think they do have some viable defensive options for sure. I get a little bit more worried with offense with the Red Bulls, but we'll get to that in a second. But Charles makes a good point about Philadelphia is going to have 3 away games over 8 days. So that is a pretty good amount of travel for them, and I do think that could play into some consideration as well. And they've also made the playoffs, so we could see some rest from Philadelphia, and they might be an easier team to play against. But I'm digressing a little bit. I also went big in the back, but I think, Blaine, you make a very good point about looking at some of that return on your investment. Hollingshead at 10 is someone who I have, but I did even have to shave a little bit of money from some of my switcheroo options, even with I also have 127 million like Sherry. So I think that's an easy one you could find room to shave. But you guys have covered a lot of the options right there. I think you could probably find a balanced defense if you wanted to, especially if you need to move some money up like Sherry was talking about. I think you could find some balanced defense, Delanea, maybe Robinson or someone, but you could find some of those cheaper guys. Smith for sure if he's going to be cheap. Let's move. Go ahead.
Oh, I want to make a note on Waston. Chat corrected me. Waston did get a red card at the end of the FC Cincinnati Montreal, so he is actually. You can never depend entirely on the MLS red dot system, but it's good to know who was right today.
But I can always count on Waston to get a red card when I have him on my team, and that was my concern.
There you go.
All right,
you go.
Phew. Thank you.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Let's move on to midfielders now. Mike, I'll start with you.
All right, so midfielders, I have Ladero. I think we saw what Chicago did against Dallas. Dallas seems to have a trouble playing Paxton Pomykal, even though they're playing him against Chicago. I don't really know what's going on with Dallas, but I think that's a good opportunity. And even though DC's kind of been a little bit higher lately, I'm really encouraged by Seattle finally getting all their pieces back. When they've had all their pieces back, they've been really strong, both home and away. So I'm not terribly scared about their trip to DC. So I have Ladero. I have Pity Martinez. My philosophy was, I know Blaine said he thought the value for Atlanta was in the defense. For me, it's getting Atlanta attackers against that FC Cincinnati defense, especially if they have Waston out. With all of Waston's faults, he has been a better option for them than whoever is his backup. So I went with Pity Martinez. As much as we complained and bashed Pity Martinez early in the year, he's been much more consistent recently. More like a 5 to 8 game player, and I think he could definitely eclipse that. And then the second game against San Jose has been on a bad run of form. It's not like a gimme game, but I think it's still an opportunity for Atlanta, especially since they're. Then my other two mid, I have Diego Valeri. With all of Portland's struggles at the home, he's still accumulating bonus points. 2 home games. I think he's a must-have this week. Valeri, double game week. You have to have him on the team. And then I have Kaku for the New York Red Bulls. I kind of talked about it. Portland's struggles and, trying to see some opportunities there. Kaku's only 8.8, which is a pretty good steal for what he's been doing recently. Been much more consistent. I think he's a pretty likely double-digit point player this week. And he allowed me to free up a little bit of money to do what I want to do up front, which is where I spent most of my money. So that's what I got in the mid.
Sherry.
Okay, I have Valeri. I agree. Even at home, it's a double game week, and you have to have him. Ladero, Pozuelo, and Ledesma. I felt that I should take at least one Cincinnati player because they're both games are at home. I don't know. Maybe that's misguided. See, that's what I would come to the podcast to hear about. The wisdom of taking a Cincinnati player. And then possibly if I can move some money around Roldan.
Oh.
What about him?
We'll go to chat for some people to weigh in. So as far as I'm concerned with Ledesma, chat to weigh in about FC Cincinnati. If you were going to go with an FC Cincinnati player in midfield this week, even though I talked up Cruz and how much I liked him, he did get injured, so I have some questions. Ledesma is the one who I'd look at. He's been very consistent for the past several games. I think he's been on some PKs. Yes, he's been on some PKs because some of them have not been very good. But he's been consistent for most of the time these past handful of games under the new coach. So if you're going to go with an FC Cincinnati player in midfield, he's the one I would pick. I would make him a bench player, though, just because we've seen what's happened. And they play pretty early on as well in the double game week. They're the third game on Saturday, so you can still see some what they're going to do if you want to make some changes if you have a single game player you want to go with. You guys have hit all the ones I was looking at. I also have Barrios on my team right now, and I'm just not very happy with that. That's something I might try to change around maybe if I free up some money. But I may consider Kaku. I had written off New York Red Bulls players, but listening to some of the things that Mike has said and having the question coming from Charles about
I don't like the fact that I'm promoting Red Bulls players.
Hey,
I feel dirty about this.
Hey, it's the way you have to be if you want to be successful in fantasy.
I think Reed just skipped me over on the midfielder section.
Did I? Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I was talking about FC Cincinnati. I just went into it. So
no, I get it.
Go ahead. I'll finish up in a second.
I really don't have too much difference. Valerian Ladero for the exact same reasons. I am starting Roldan. I like these two matchups. Dallas and DC have both struggled a lot, and he's been putting up decent numbers. So I think this is a good chance to grab him. He's a little pricey, but yeah. And then I weigh in a little different. I've been on if you're going to take a Red Bull midfielder, it has to be Royer, and I've kind of ran that way the whole season. And you get good Kaku and bad Kaku, and I know he's been better lately, but I cannot trust him. And yeah, given the way these two matchups go, I think this is Royer's week. I wouldn't be opposed to Tchaikovsky, and if I need the money, I may go ahead and downgrade it. He has had some dynamite numbers in certain games. And I think playing the home game versus Philly, I think is going to be where Tchaikovsky could have a better score than Royer. But I like Royer going into Portland a whole lot more, so I think I'm going to leave it there. And then while I've got it, Williamson for Portland is also on my bench. He's a 4 million player, starting lately, hasn't done a whole lot. But yeah, I watch him play, and he's bound to go off at some point, and at 4 million, and I don't have a switcheroo for that spot, so I'm going to tie that in there. And then the big part I want to talk about, Mike was telling me he thinks the offensive money is better in Atlanta than the defense. I do have one roster or lineup dependent switch to make, and if I see Miram starting in that first game, he has been really solid for Atlanta when he starts, but getting him to start is so hit or miss. I would take a flyer at Miram at 6.4 if he starts that first game in Cincinnati on the wing. That is an easy swap out from Escobar, and then go grab a different defender there. You actually save a little bit of money. And there's a couple other defenders that were talked about that you could go get for cheaper than this. And I really do think Miram will make my lineup if he starts that first game.
If we're talking about good Kaku versus bad Kaku, I would imagine Blaine, being the SKC fan, is the expert on bad Kaku. So,
one thing to mention with Royer and Rachowski, and one of the reasons I coup, is that I don't know who starts. I mean, with Royer and Rachowski, we've seen rotation pretty much every double game week that the Red Bulls have. None of those other midfielders have started both games. Obviously, with the playoffs and the crunch time, maybe that'll be different. But I don't know who Chris Arnaz thinks is his best starting 11 with that situation. So that's my only concern going somewhere else like Royer. I mean, yeah, Royer's been pretty good, but one of the reasons his value is down as much as it has is because he keeps being used as a sub because Chris Arnaz keeps team. And whereas Kaku has been playing 90 minutes when he's available pretty consistently since the second half of the season.
Yeah, I haven't really been thinking a lot about those New York players. Gressel is Another one that we haven't talked about yet, but Royer, Gressel, I think Patrick was saying those could be some sneaky picks as well. I agree. I thought a lot about Gressel this round. I ended up not going with him because his numbers have been a little lower recently. He was really getting some more points, and I'm not sure if that's just Pity coming in and actually doing better has taken away some from Gressel or what, but definitely a good option you could look at. I mean, if you are running with a lineup of like Joseph and Pity and Gressel, that's pretty aggressive as well. As Mike was saying, against Sporting or FCC, could show some very strong results because Gressel is a solid player, no doubt, right there. A little bit easier on the budget as well.
He would be so good if he was listed as a defender.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be pretty wild. A lot of your other options this week are going to be coming from single game week players, and I just don't know if a lot of them stack up. If you wanted to get a single game week player in here, I think you could potentially look at LA Galaxy. You could potentially maybe look at New England, and you could also, of course, look down at LAFC, depending on how some of those games go with the Voyagers Cup as well. But I do think a lot of the best midfield options are coming from our double game week players this week. Would you all agree, Sherry?
Yes.
Mike, Blaine?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the midweek or midfield players are in double game weeks with Ladero and Valeri's. You know, even when we're talking about, you know, Kaku or Martinez, there's options available there. That may not be true up top.
I mean, you might look at an Orlando. I mean, both the way they and Houston are both kind of on the bubble. Nani had a great round last week, so you could look at something there. And Orlando's done okay on the road. But I don't know. I just feel like you could take a bet on Chicago doing well again against FC Cincinnati in their second game. But I just feel like these are the cream of the crop, and we should be able to afford some good midfielders here. I mean, but you might got to look at people like you already talked about Lordan. What about Blanco as well? Another Portland midfielder that you would want to consider. I would put over a lot of the single game week players as well. So just some options for people to think about out there. Maybe even Nagby if you wanted to go crazy. 3 Atlanta midfielders. Just run with it right there. So I know
You
that
shouldn't have 3 Atlanta midfielders. You gotta, regardless, you gotta have one more spot.
Hey, you could go crazy. I would not recommend it, but you could go crazy. Maybe you don't want Gressel. We've already talked about Mayer, and we got to talk about, I think, Nagby if you're looking at some of those key players. But let's move on to our forwards now. Sherry, who do you like?
Well, when I first started drafting my team, I put in Zlatan, Martinez, and Vela, and realized that there would be 3 holes in my team if I did that. But I thought that would be a lot of fun. They could fight over who was going to go on the bench and duke it out. I think they're very close in the Golden Boot as far as number of goals. And I think they're, regardless of what the team is doing, they're going to be going after this. So anyhow, what I ended up with was Latan, Martinez, and Ondrasik from Dallas.
Okay, yeah.
He fit my budget, and he's had some interesting games. And I did, this is sort of off topic, but I did want to mention that one of the things I like about listening to the podcast and all of the 3 of you and guests is that I learn a lot more about other teams that I wouldn't have looked at before. And Minnesota was one of them. Steve was on, and he talked about Minnesota, and I've really been paying attention to them. Not this week, but when they're on a double
when
game
needed,
week.
when needed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So those are my 3.
Blaine.
Ondrasik's on the bench.
I won't forget you this time, Blaine.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually got those exact same 3 as Sherry.
Wow.
This is one of those weeks where my budget is actually hurting me for once. I'm only at a 120.6 right now. And so I've fallen way behind the curve. I think Jason said he's up over 130 now. and I usually compare myself to Jason on a lot of this, so I've fallen way behind. If I had an extra 5 million, Andrasic would be Rui Diaz. I just I want to get him in there as a third forward with Martinez and Zlatan, but it's just I don't have the budget for it, and I'm unwilling to make the sacrifices in the midfield to go ahead and bring him in. Once I see the Dallas lineup, I still may switch to Rui Diaz instead of Zlatan, but yeah, I can't I just can't see spending that type of money this week. I looked through the rest of the lineup. Andrasic has been playing that forward. Ferreira for Dallas at 7.1 has been playing more in the midfield and been doing well. And then the rest of your double game week forwards are really expensive and may or may not give you the production you want. A lot of these guys are hit or miss to start 2 games right now. Fernandez hasn't been starting. Ebobisse and him are rotating a lot right now. Ebobisse at 5.6, if he starts both of those games, is a steal. Definitely got to keep on the radar. But that's I'm in the same boat as Sherry right now.
Michael.
All right, well then, so obviously I do have Joseph Martinez, but then I think my other 2 picks have not been picked yet. If I heard right, I think Sherry was considering. I have Jordan Morris. Rui Diaz to me is too expensive. Jordan Morris has been the much hotter player of late. He's been pretty consistent either with goals or assists. So I went with him at 10 million. And then I have Carlos Vela. For me, he's healthy again. We've seen him play.
Go, Mike.
And him at home against a TFC who's playing midweek and has had a lot of defensive issues recently, I think is a recipe for success. I wasn't convinced by Brandon Fernandez for the reasons that Blaine mentioned, with him rotating with Ebobisse and Portland struggles at home. And then the rest, Dallas, I think they just have a tough sledding with Seattle and New York City. So I kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to invest it and go with Vela.
Interesting indeed. I was just asking Chad if anybody was going with Vela, and Patrick said no single game week players, but then Mike drops that bombshell. 2 bombshells, Morris and Vela. Did not see that one coming. Saw the Vela one coming. Did not see Morris as an option. It's interesting. It's interesting, especially if looking at a budget. I'm seriously considering. I mean, I have Martinez on there, no questions right there. I also have Rui Diaz on my team, so I went with those 2 players right there. I have a little bit of money left in my budget. Maybe I'll look for Andrasic. I think he also goes by the Cobra, so if that becomes an easier way to say his name. But I just have 2 forwards right now, and I'm looking at trying to go harder with my midfield, and maybe if I do move to Lukaku, save up some money there, that could be good. But I like Rui Diaz, I like Martinez. I don't think you have to have all 3 forwards this week. I think you have some good midfield options that you could lean on to help with that double game week there without having to rely on a single game week player. That being said, Vela is a magical person who has just been getting things done this week and must factor into our final segment of captain picks if you feel so strongly. So, Blaine, who is going to be your captain?
It's Joseph this week. As much as I like Zlatan's matchup and even Vela's matchup at an even higher price, I don't think you can bet against Martinez against Cincinnati for just 1 game. Give him the second game to pad his stats a little bit. I think it's got to be him.
Michael?
Joseph Martinez plays FC Cincinnati. You should captain Joseph Martinez. As much as I like the other match, yeah, it's Joseph Martinez against FC Cincinnati, which probably means he's not going to score in that game. Yeah, I'm going to give it two shot.
Double hat trick.
Yeah.
Sherry.
Yeah, that's not crazy with Joseph.
Martinez.
And we can make it 4 for 4 because I'm also
for sure
Joseph
he's going
Martinez.
to tank this weekend.
Well, I'm looking at him as well, and so that's what I'm thinking. But that gives me time for just a real quick final segment. We're all talking about how he's going to fail. We had a great question that came in. I can't remember if it was on Reddit or if it was through Twitter, but someone was asking for suggestions on how they could differentiate their team or how they could climb a few more spots in the overall ladder as the season is winding down here. I think that's because we often see a lot of template in some of these final games, but we're talking about Vela. I think the answer to this question is you have to look at differentials. I want to hear what you all have to say, and I think this is a good example of, do you take, well, Joseph Martinez against FC Cincinnati is going to be 90% of the people. Do you risk Vela on him getting a bigger score, on Martinez maybe getting rested, on Martinez not having as great of a game? What do you do? So I think that answer is you have to look at differentials. What about you all, Blaine or Mike, if you guys want to start first?
Yeah, I mean, I think making a different captain pick is probably going to be a great way to, differentiate yourself from the rest of the table. Most people, 99% of people are going to pick Joseph Martinez as their captain. So I could see it, if you're trying to go for like just the weekly score, putting it on Ladera. I mean, honestly, like I might do that too because I'm so far down. Hey, let's see what happens if Joseph Martinez gets hurt or something. Something crazy, or just Vela just absolutely goes off, maybe something happens. But I mean, I can also see, we've talked a lot of different, we haven't talked a whole lot about Dallas this game. So I could see going heavy on Dallas players, trying to swerve that way. But I mean, we've talked about it, in games. It's a lot harder to do differentials on double games, but that's where I would go. Maybe make a different captain pick, or maybe emphasize some of these teams that we're this week. It's pretty clearly we don't have a lot of Dallas players. We don't have a lot of Red Bull players. Maybe one or if you went strong on those teams, there were some good values. Blame Dallas's forward. Maybe you could pick up one of the New York Red Bulls forward, White, but you put them into a switcheroo. There's definitely some ways to do it, but it's a lot harder on a double game. But captain, maybe some crazy single game picks too that can make a difference. But you're taking the gamble. I think what we do here is probably giving you the more consistent, more reliable picks. There's a reason they're differentials. Like Joseph Martinez is most likely the best highest scoring player in fantasy this round. But if you're just trying to move up or maybe win that extra time jersey for the highest score of the week, do something crazy.
Would Valeri be crazy?
I don't know that he'd be crazy. I certainly think he'd be like fourth.
In recent form,
overall.
yeah, he'd be a little crazy given how consistent some of the other guys have been. But
Yeah.
I mean, if we get a classic Valeri performance here, you could make it. You could really bank some extra points on this.
Well,
I think this
don't
is one of those weeks where you have to go with Martinez as your captain. This is, if you're going to try to make up ground, this is not the week to mess with your captain.
Yeah, but we're talking about they're playing against FC Cincinnati, and we're looking for those differentials. So, yeah, it is Joseph against Cincinnati, but maybe Joseph gets a goal, and then Pitti gets a goal, then Gressel gets 2 goals, and they've run up their score, and then Vela gets a hat trick.
My thing is the potential for losing ground on that is too great to risk it. And Joseph has been that consistent that I worry about that.
So I think if you're going to try to make a huge move up the standings, you've got to kind of risk making a losing ground. You know what I mean? Like, in order to gain a lot of ground, you're going to have to risk losing. There's just no way about it at this point in the season. So you've got to have to make a big like that. And I mean, if someone like Valeri, like Sherry said, I don't agree with Blaine that he's that crazy. He's gotten his last few, 4 against Atlanta, but 12, 10, 9, and 5. So he's a pretty dependable captain pick. I mean, if Joseph Martinez wasn't playing FC Cincinnati, I think he'd definitely be in the conversation. Ladero would also be in the conversation. Those are all great captain picks, guys who can really score and are pretty certain locks to be double-digit point getters this double game week. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to, make a huge move up the standings, you're going to have to risk being, one of the worst teams this week.
Yeah. My thing, and I told you if I had a little bit more budget, I am looking to try to make some of those moves. Definitely set your forward lineup as Martinez, Vela, and Zlatan this week. If you can afford it, sacrifice some money somewhere, maybe sacrifice another double game week player. We talk about the Red Bulls and just the lack of who starts. I was looking at it. Diaz for Columbus has kind of been one of those players. He's been looking pretty good, has a decent average. He'll save you about $1 million from Kaku and Royer. And if you're looking to free up some money, maybe you do go with a single game week midfielder like that to fill in the gap and save a little bit of money. And if you're really wanting to make up the ground, go with the hot players right now who have been putting up good numbers that have good matchups. And I think both Vela and Zlatan are options that have been putting up really good numbers and have favorable matchups. Both of them at home, both of them playing teams, traveling a distance, and playing a midweek game. Like that, if you do both of those, and let's say everybody else in the game takes only one of those two options, you could potentially gain 15, 20 points this week over any of the other forwards, especially if you're looking at, like I am, at an Andrasic is your third forward. The Andrasic upgrade to Vela is just going to be money in the bank for you almost any given week.
Anything you want to add, Sherry?
Well, I'm still going to try and get all three of the Golden Boot candidates. I don't think it's going to happen.
I like that. That's cool. I like that. I like that line of thought.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm just gonna say I don't. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say I don't like Zlatan this week because he's playing against Montreal, which is a bad team. It's not on national TV, so I could just feel like Zlatan be like, "I Zlatan last week. I'm not Zlatan this week." That's the frustration about Zlatan is like just sometimes he just doesn't show up. Should he like be an absolute stud against Montreal and get ahead? Of course. Is he? Could he just take the week off and like? Frenchman, I'm not showing up against them.
But the Golden Boot. But.
That's right.
Maybe
the Golden Boot.
All of my boots are golden. Zlatan has enough money to make his boots golden.
Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Let's just get this.
We've hit 10 o'clock.
Yes, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's wrap this thing up with our plugs. Blaine, what do you have?
Nothing from me this week.
Michael.
Yeah, just follow me at Mike That Tag.
Sherry.
Just listen to the podcast, join Patreon, support the effort, and good luck.
Yes. As for me, you can check out everything as usual over at MLSFantasyBoss.com. Also, r/FantasyMLS. The subreddit community has great conversations and a great opportunity for ranting going on. And please check out our Discord server. You could get to it by going to MLSFantasyBoss.com over on the right sidebar. It's free. It's a fantastic community. A lot of the top players are in there giving out advice, running back and forth between ideas. Every now and then someone from MLS even stops by just to kind of chat with us. It's a fun community, and I encourage everyone to get involved with that. So with that being said, good luck. All right, that is the podcast as usual. Chat, if you guys have a few more questions, send them this way. Thank you so much, Sherry. What did you end up doing to get it to work?
I have absolutely no idea.
Of course.
I was working on my desktop, my phone, and my iPad. And I would go into one and it would say, well, you've just disconnected the other one because you've signed in somewhere else. I downloaded something, I don't know what it was, and then I just kept hitting buttons and all of a sudden there you were. So
hey.
I don't know.
There it goes. Yeah, it's definitely been a little quirky. Since we've moved to this new system, it's still a toss up, but it's working. That's really all. It's like we're just sort of flying by the seat of our pants. Or like, is it working? Can we hear? But okay, good, go. Let's do it.
Well, when I have to give a name for something, I forget what you call it. Anyhow, I go with Techno Mama because I am so bad at technology.
Nice.
But I figured it out. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, not a problem.
So I apologize for my dramatic late entrance.
It's all good. It looks like...
Let suspense build to a fever pitch.
Well, you did great. We're so happy to have you on.
This was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Chat seems pretty quiet tonight, guys. Did we get all of your questions answered, or are you just still thinking about anything else that you want to ask?
They're clearly amazed with my Zlatan impression.
They are. They are. It was quality. JoJo's asking for defenders. We ran off a few of them. I think we had a little bit of a difference between going big or more conservative with defenders. Talking about Hollingshead, Cannon, Delanea.
No one picked Robinson. I was surprised by that.
I said Robinson.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
I had
Yeah, I had him on my team before I realized I was broke.
Yeah, no, I have him too.
Okay.
I mean, I've got an FC Cincinnati defender on my bench as a switcheroo. Otherwise, I'm just going with 4 and leaving the other spot just to save money and maybe look at a midfielder or a forward switch right there.
Can we get 4 players a team again? God, it's made it so much harder, doesn't it?
It's been good to have 3. It's harder, but it's a good thing.
It's
Good
tough,
hard.
but it's
Good hard.
Yeah. Speaking of Zlatan and all that, it was a little consolation. Melia got the first Zlatan penalty save in MLS. That's the first one he's missed, and that made me happy to see Zlatan fail at 1. I mean, he put the rebound in right afterwards, but who cares? The record's no longer perfect.
It's always one of the weird fantasy, like fantasy makes this like such a huge deal, but it's really not. It's pretty much the same as if it went in, but fantasy scores it like penalty save, yay, penalty miss, boo to you.
Yeah. It's a 3-point goal instead of a 5-point goal. Who cares?
I know, it's like an assist now. That's one of the weird fantasy.
But no, just random stat of the week while we wait for chat questions. I ran the numbers. We talk about Raimondo being so great, and he is. And 92 penalties faced. He's got roughly a 35% save rate, which is insane.
Unbelievable.
Melia's
so he's
body
going
of
to get
work.
keeper of the year, right? Because there's no other keeper of the year that's like been that great. So they're just going to give it to him as like a career. Right?
Probably. But no, I was running the numbers because I didn't believe one of my sporting guys. Yeah, I didn't believe one of my sporting guys. Melia has saved now 10 of 23, which is a 48%, 45% save rate. Like, he doesn't have the same body of work, but when you've got a save rate on penalties of over 40%, that's insane.
Sample size.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. It's just still. But that's I posted that somewhere else. And somebody goes, "Oh, are they good penalties or are they bad penalties?" And you look at some of the names he's come up against and the names he's saved, and I can't remember all of them, but he's been saving the big names, not just the guys that nobody knows. Like Zlatan, first penalty save in MLS, and it goes to Melia.
There you go. Keep an eye on that one. Well, it looks like we don't have much from chat this week, so I guess we'll just round that out right here, end it there, and I'll get last from JoJo. Good or bad, PK, you still have to guess where to go. Oh, okay. Well, no, that's true. That's very true. Sometimes they can. Sometimes you can watch the film and kind of have an idea of people's tendencies. So I think it is probably still a guess at the end. I'm sure some people will be screaming. Maybe Travis, who does some goaling in his little league. Look for tells or look for just something like where's the foot placement or where's the hip placement. Like, I know people will talk about that, but it's so much like the split second reactions. I think a lot of it is just kind of study and guessing. I think it is just kind of
study instinct. I mean, instinct is your counter to guessing. Like, you go with it, and some people just know the tells, know what they are, and can read them
for sure, yeah.
And either you've got it or you don't. And I mean, Raimondo's a great example. He's a short goalkeeper on top of it all, and so his save percentage is just that much more insane for what he is. But when you do it that many times, like, it's more than just he's lucky. He sees something that other people don't.
Cheap midfielder options from NDM. I think anybody from New York we had gone over is a good option. I think Kaku is kind of sort of the collective kind of best cheap option. Gressel's pretty cheap if you're looking for somebody there. Anybody from FC Cincinnati, if you wanted to go there as a switcheroo, Ledesma, I said, would be my top pick. What's Roldan at? He's not too expensive, is he?
He's at 10.
10.
I mean, is that cheap now? With 120 plus millions. That's not too bad.
It seems cheap for everyone other than a defender.
So stuff right there. Oh my
Hi,
goodness.
Lily.
All right, I'll be right back,
Snacks.
guys.
Snacks for Blaine. There
It's
it is.
Cheerio time.
Cheerio time. That's right. We needed our Lily appearance for the night. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope it was helpful. For those of you here in live chat, I already threw off for the show. But yeah, we'll be finishing up next week with our last two Patreon supporters who help me wrap things up. Things are coming to an end, guys. This is the third, or we have 3 more weeks left, including this one. So it's coming down to the end.
I
It's been
don't
a lot
I
of
don't know
fun.
what I'm going to do with my time.
Well,
You're
we
gonna
might-
join our.
What do
We're-
you
you're
do
gonna
when you're not doing
Join
this?
our Star Wars book club.
Well, we plan for the next season, and yes, we might have another Star Wars podcast. Best bench options from Eric. Anybody from FC Cincinnati is a good option just because they're cheap. After that, I think you could look at some of the defenders, maybe a second, maybe double up on a defender from one of the teams that we mentioned, or a New York player. I think those would be. Do you guys have specific names that you're looking at for your bench?
Maybe that who's the Dallas forward? Andrade?
Ondrasik. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
I didn't have the money for a bench this week.
Oh snap, Blaine!
I didn't
spending it
either.
all. Spending it all.
Well, one of the things that I have learned from listening to the podcast and for that video that you did is how to use the switcheroo and how to use the bench. I have a problem with spatial relations, temporal and spatial. And so the guy would be the right guy, but he was in the wrong place or in the right place at the wrong time. And I couldn't get them. It was awful. And you did that video and I thought, well, that wasn't that hard, really. So that has helped me
Good.
a lot. I have used that strategy.
Good, yeah. That was the point of the video. I know that no problem, Eric. It seems really hard, and I think sometimes people start hearing us talk about the switcheroo, and even the pundits at MLS were talking more about the switcheroo, and I think that can be a barrier from people who are more casual, and they're like, whoa, what do you mean? I'm not just picking people. There's, I don't know. So yeah, that was one of my goals. Was I was really just trying to be like, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. Here you go. And we had talked about it in the past, but I think this week or this year I was able to get a video that I may have used the first week as an example, I think. And so when you could see it from something more recent instead of just screenshots of seasons past, that I think it made it seem a bit more approachable, and I'm glad it did.
Yep, no, it definitely helped.
It did. Good, thanks. Yeah, thanks, JoJo. Well, I guess this is the third time, so I do think it's run down now. I'm gonna let this thing start uploading to YouTube so I can pull it and edit it for the podcast, for the SoundCloud stream. So thank you so much, guys, for chat, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
See y'all.
See ya.